Summer of the Mariposas by Guadalupe Garcia McCall, read by Melinda Garcia. Chapter 2. El pájaro. Pájaro, pajarito, encántanos con tu canto bonito. The bird. Bird, little birdie, enchant us with your pretty song. We can cross the border at dawn, pretend like we're going on vacation with our father, Juanita suggested. We walked our bikes out of the woods and mounted them, ready to ride the rest of the way. Once we're through the checkpoints, we can drive straight to El Sacrificio. Excuse me, and how are you going to do that? Are you going to call your fairy godmother and ask her to turn a watermelon into a chariot? I asked. Because I don't know about you, but I left my magic beans in my other shorts. Juanita gave me the evil eye. Cállate. I'm not stupid, so you can stop acting that way. Velia patted her shirt pocket with a flattened hat. It's not like we're broke. We have money now. You took his money? Juanita asked, shocked. I can't believe you stole from a dead man. It doesn't belong to us. We can't just take it, Vita said, looking scared. We can if it's for a good cause, Delia said. We're not using it to buy ourselves stuff. It's not like we're taking a vacation. We're using it to take him home. I thought of the drowned man again. We'd left him sitting by the riverbank, drying under the mulberry tree, the tiny mariposas clinging to his mouth and nostrils as if trying to resuscitate him. Well, technically, we'll be using it on ourselves because he's dead, Juanita pointed out. Okay, I said, looking up at the darkening sky in frustration. So, how are we going to get there? Do you even know where you're going? We can take Papa's old car. There's an old map of Coahuila in the glove box, Juanita said. She hit my arm with the back of her hand and then grabbed the handlebars of her bike as she pedaled off. That car's a lemon, Velia yelled after her. She smacked her lips in disgust and then pedaled after Juanita. It's worse than a lemon, her twin elaborated. Shaking our heads, Velia and I pushed off and rode our bikes at full speed, trying to catch up with Juanita and Velia. I had to work extra hard because Bita was riding behind me, her arms wrapped tightly around my shoulders and waist, like a heavy backpack. That car's a pile of junk, Juanita, Delia continued. Not even a dung beetle would want to push that old ball of caca around, much less hold on to it. Mama should have sold it a long time ago. Bought us some new school clothes or something, Velia added, slowing down to talk to us. The girls were right, of course, about everything. The car was still running, so it was sellable. Since Mama didn't know how to drive, preferring to take the bus everywhere she went in Eagle Pass, she made me start it once a week and drive it around the block to keep the tires from going flat. But my hermanitas were mistaken if they thought I was going to drive them around in that death trap. It needed an oil change and the brakes squealed, and those were just the things I knew to watch out for. God only knew what else might be wrong with it. See? You can't even agree on how to get there, I said, looking at Juanita for acknowledgement. Well, we're going. You can join us like a good big sister, cinco hermanitas, together forever. Or you can break our motto and stay behind like a coward. I turned around, grinding my teeth. That's insane, I growled as I pedaled on, wondering how to fix things without any real solutions coming to mind. Velia and Delia rode around Juanita and flanked me. Listen, if you don't take us, Juanita's willing to drive, Velia said without looking at me, as she slowed down to match my unhurried pace. Don't be ridiculous, I said. Juanita wouldn't know how to find the gas pedal if it had a rattle on its tail. At least I have a driving permit. Let's just get home for now. The right thing to do will come to us. We let the conversation die off and pedaled our bikes back to the house in silence. When we got there, the sun was a luminous orange globe touching the horizon. Mama had already left for work. She was a waitress at Mr. Gee's, an all-night cafe off Main Street on the edge of town. So she was always gone by 8 o'clock and didn't come back until the next morning. Soon after we got home from the river, the girls had another one of their yakking sessions in the twins' room, and as a result, they were running around the house packing for their trip to Mexico. I didn't intervene or stop them from packing. They were exhilarated by the idea of taking a long, adventurous journey, but I knew very well how this was going to turn out. They weren't going anywhere, they just didn't know it yet. I ignored them and went to the kitchen to fix them welfare burgers for dinner. We called them welfare burgers because we used regular sliced bread instead of buns. Mama said buns were more expensive, and they were the exact same thing. So she just didn't see the point of wasting money on them. As for me, I wanted a sandwich. A long, hot summer day made me hungry for something cold. So I took out the bologna and cheese. Because there was no mayo, I ate my sandwich, dry as a cardboard, as I stood over the kitchen sink and looked out the window at the darkening sky. When I looked up at the kitchen clock on the wall by the back door, I realized it was much later than I had thought. So I went to talk to the girls. I poked my head into the twins' room, humoring my sisters as they sorted through a pile of unfolded laundry in the middle of the full-sized bed. Dinner's on the table. You'll need to eat to keep your strength up for that long drive. Do you think we'll need sweaters? Velia asked her twin, pulling an old tattered sweater out of the cluttered closet. She tucked it under her chin and displayed it over her flat chest. It's the middle of the canicula, I said, stepping all the way into the room. Why would you need a sweater during the hottest part of the summer? It gets cold in the desert, Delia said. She sat cross-legged on their dilapidated dresser, smug as a cat. We're going to a desert? Pita asked. But I wanted to wear this dress. She had put on her best church dress, a baby blue, short-sleeved silk dress she had for a long time. She twirled around and watched the full skirt swirl around her like an open umbrella. Then she stopped, looked at herself in the mirror, and tugged at the snug waistband. Clearly, Pita wanted to impress Abuelita. She always had to try so much harder than the twins to feel pretty. That dress doesn't even fit you anymore. Delian crossed her legs and jumped off the dresser. That dress doesn't even fit you anymore. Delia uncrossed her legs and jumped off the dresser. She poked Pita's baby fat and pulled on the dress collar's silk ribbon bow. Too many tamales. You've got to stop eating so much, fajita Pita. Wear something else. You look like a chile relleno in that. I don't care. It's my favorite dress and I'm wearing it, Pita whined as she slapped Delia's hand away. And don't call me that. I took Pita's round face in my hands and squeezed her cheeks. You don't have to worry. We're not going to any deserts. Coahuila is a desert, isn't it? It's next to Chihuahua, and Chihuahua's a desert, Delia asked in no one in particular. Think so? Delia furrowed her eyebrows. I rolled my eyes. Of course not, calabazas. You're such knuckleheads sometimes, I said, looking around and talking to all of them at once. Okay, let's get this straight. First of all, only the western part of Coahuila is a desert. El Sacrificio isn't, even though it's just as hot as Eagle Pass in the summer. But we're not going there anyway. So just get in there and eat your dinner. Then go to bed. It's almost 8. Too late to worry about the body tonight. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Tomorrow? Juanita complained as I turned around and stared out the room. What do you mean tomorrow? But we have to go back tonight, Delia whined, to prep him. We'll talk about it tomorrow, I insisted. Then I turned around and left them there, whining and fighting again. I went to my room and entertained myself by reading a few pages of The Great Gatsby. It was on my summer reading list, and so far I had not been able to get past the third chapter. My mind was on other matters, like how to settle the girls into bed without causing a riot. I played again the idea of calling customs to tell them about the body, but there was something else none of us had considered. Not even Juanita, with her presumed giftedness, had realized that once our swimming hole was discovered, we'd never be able to go back there. At the very least, the Border Patrol would keep an eye on that particular area of the river in case anyone else tried sneaking through that gap in the fence. We were lucky they hadn't noticed us swimming there already. They might even close it off, making us leave our swimming days behind. By the time the girls burst into my room, frayed backpacks and old bucket purses bursting at the seams, I was all ready to go. I stood up, picked up my own backpack, hiked it high up on my shoulder, and faced them. I'm going to Marisol's house. I think she's having a sleepover tonight. What? When did this come up? You didn't mention it before. Juanita's continuous demanding tone was the most frustrating part of her. What about the body? We said we'd take him back. I told you, we're not going to Mexico, I said decisively. Mama would kill us. Besides, she's already mad. I called to tell her I won't be here tonight to take care of you. She was so upset she threatened to cut her hours short and come home. I think she's already working on it. It was a total lie, but they needed a reality check and they wouldn't call Mama to confirm my story. Besides, while I made dinner, I've developed a plan to have Mama be home that night. If not in body, then in spirit. So you all better be in bed by the time she gets here, I continued. You know how she gets when she's in a bad mood. This isn't fair, Juanita screamed, her arms rigid and her face reddened with rage. She was actually crying. Juanita never cried. Her stubbornness usually led to yelling or bullying. It was unnerving. I don't think I'd seen her cry since she found out Santa Claus wasn't real. Suddenly, I felt like the wicked stepmother in Snow White. Juanita, probably embarrassed at her tears, stormed out of the room. She didn't go very far, though. I could hear her mumbling under her breath in the hallway.
Delia threw her backpack on the floor and kicked it to the corner of the room. You're an ignorant, goody-good, wannabe saint. Una santurona, she declared.
And a sissy face, Velia added spitefully. Their remarks didn't bother me. I was used to the twins' stylized brand of cursing by now. They'd been doing it all summer, pretending they were old enough, or even brave enough to curse like sailors, but never quite get the words out. I was more worried about Juanita, who was glaring at me from the door, who would do something drastic like storm out of the house and go back to the river. I bet Marisol kicks her big fat behind out, and she has to sneak back in here like a sewer rat, Delia told Velia, flopping down next to her twin on the bed. They both looked at me like they were about to spit in my face, eyes glistening with wrath and frustration. Juanita came back into the room, looking more like herself again. You're a lousy sister, she yelled. Enough! I finally raised my voice the way Mama does when she's done putting up with them. Now go to bed before I call Mama back and tell her what's going on. And you, stop cursing or I'll wash your mouth out with Clorox.
To my surprise, the twins flounced off the bed. All four of my sisters marched out and down the hall to the kitchen without another word. I went out the front door, locked it, and put the spare key to the deadbolt in my pocket. There was no other set of keys in the house to that door. So, if they wanted to open the door again, they'd have to wait until Mama came home or jump out a window.
The thought had barely entered my mind when I heard the unmistakable sound of a window being slid open. I turned around to look at the darkened house. The only light was in Pita's room, which faced the front. You can't back out of this. We outvote you 4-1, Juanita screamed, her body halfway out the window. I lifted my hands in the air, my index finger extended. Rule number 1 of the code of the Cinco Hermanitas, the eldest sister has the final word. Always. Good night. I left the yard, closing the gate behind me noisily so they could hear me leaving in the moonless light. Then I walked resolutely up the sidewalk towards Brazos Street. The thought of them escaping through a window made me cringe. I froze momentarily before I reached the corner, but then I realized they wouldn't do that. They might be wild, but they depended on me for everything. If I wasn't on it, it usually didn't fly. That was the beauty of following the code of the 5 little sisters. We really did everything together.
I walked around the corner past Aguilera's house and cut across two empty lots, where I got the left leg of my jeans tangled up on some bramble weeds. I had to stop to pull the brambles off, and then I turned up Zamora Street toward Mr. Gee's. Peering in through the glass window, I saw that Mama was standing at the counter, slicing pie with a heavy knife. Her black hair was twisted up in a haphazard knot, and the dark circles under her eyes were more pronounced tonight. She had been working so hard lately. Guilt stabbed at me, but I pushed it away. Even though I knew it would make my mom mad, I needed to talk to her.
As if she had ESP, Mama froze in mid-slice and looked up, making immediate contact with me. The sight of me standing there with my nose pressed against the glass made Mama clench her mouth. And she cut through the crust of that pie like she wanted to kill it. She finished plating the slice of pie before she'd left the counter. I opened the door and started to go inside, but she hurried to meet me. Taking my arm like a vice like grip, she turned me around and marched me back outside. What are you doing here? She massaged her forehead with her fingertips, rubbing at the worried line between her eyebrows as if she wanted to erase it.
It's important, I started, noticing the deep set lines on her ring finger where her wedding band used to sit. It had been months since she'd stopped wearing it. But apparently, wearing it over the years, even after gaining a lot of weight, had left her finger scarred.
Mama used to be skinny before she got married. Then she got really fat. I mean, really fat. Like almost 300 pounds fat. But she lost it all in 11 months since Papa left. So she was back to being thin again. Not skinny thin like she used to be when she was a girl, the way the twins are now, but definitely thinner. So thin, in fact, she didn't look like our mama anymore. But I wasn't worried about her anymore because she wasn't as sad as she used to be, and she was eating again. She looked more like me and Juanita now, strong and voluptuous, but tired from working so hard. We talked about this, Odelia, Mama warned in Spanish. Unless it's an emergency, you can't come here. One more incident like the last one, and I'm out of here. Is that what you want? To get me fired? Last time I was here, I was trying to get Bita to come back home. She'd make such a scene, bursting into the cafe to whine to Mama that the girls were picking on her again. No. But the girls, I started again. I don't want to hear it, Odelia, Mama warned, her upper lip getting thinner and tighter as she spoke. I've told you before, if nobody's dying and the house isn't on fire, it's not an emergency. How can I convince her without giving anything away? But they're being ridiculous, I continued, blinking nervously now, because we caught the attention of Mr. Moore, the restaurant manager. Mama tried to control her temper by closing her eyes and taking a deep breath. I mean it, Odelia. Take care of your sisters. I can't be in two places at once. This wasn't working. I was only bothering Mama, and she couldn't help me anyway. I wanted to scream at Mama and tell her that everything wasn't going to be okay and that I couldn't take care of it. But then Mr. Moore burst through the door, almost knocking us both down. Is there a problem? Mr. Moore asked, standing halfway out the restaurant and holding the door open. His bald pink head was covered in sweat. It glistened like a Christmas ornament under a fluorescent light spilling out from the cafe. I felt like taking the cleaning rag from his apron pocket and wiping it down for him. But that wouldn't have been nice. No matter how good, it would have made me feel to do it. Oh, no. Odelia just came to pick up some money for eggs, Mama assured her boss, quickly switching to English. Reaching into the front pocket of her apron, she made a show of pulling out a couple of dollar bills and handing them to me. Mr. Moore shook his head. And this is more important than keeping your job? No, it's not. And Odelia knows better. It won't happen again, Mama whispered. Normally, Mama doesn't let people mistreat her. She knows how to defend herself, but she had to act all meek and mild because Mr. Moore was a big, fat, slob-eating hog, and she needed this job. After all, it wasn't like she had many career options without a high school diploma. She spoke English well enough despite the fact that she only went as far as the third grade in Mexico, which was all her parents had money for. And she hadn't come to the States until she met and married Papa when she was just 17 years old. Up to now, he'd always taken care of her. When she first started working, the only jobs she qualified for were janitor, maid, and waitress. After a few trial runs, she decided she hated the other two, so she was doing her best to keep this job. She couldn't stand Mr. Moore, but she got along with the customers and they tipped her well. Then let's get back to work, shall we? Mr. Moore raised his eyebrows. When we didn't move, he cleared his throat. With his lips clamped shut and his eyes bulging out of their sockets, he looked like a toad on steroids. But Mama knew he was about to explode, so she nudged me aside. I'll be in a minute. Mama said, taking me by the shoulders and turning me around so I was facing the parking lot. I'm sorry, I whispered as soon as Mr. Moore was inside the restaurant again. I didn't mean to. Whatever it is, deal with it, Odelia, Mama insisted. You're the eldest. It's your responsibility to take care of your hermanitas. I can't do it all. Now, go home before I lose my job. Because I'd known how going to see Mama would turn out, I left Mr. Geese without feeling one bit of remorse over not telling her what was going on. At least I tried. There was nothing more I could do when she wouldn't give me the time of day. I couldn't help but think she wouldn't get in so much trouble at work if she and I had cell phones. Money was too tight, and calling the restaurant would only get her in more trouble. Mr. Moore didn't approve of personal calls. But then, a cell phone would probably be yet another reason for Mr. Moore to accuse Mama of neglecting her work. Last week, I saw him chew out Mama's younger coworker for texting instead of finding something useful to do on her break, like tidying up the break room. Feeling less than thrilled at having to once again take care of it, I walked back down Zamora Street the same way I'd walk up. The truth is, I needed to stall for a while if my plan was going to work tonight. So, instead of turning right on Brazos, I just kept going until I hit our old elementary school. The campus fence wasn't locked, so I was able to walk right up to the classrooms. I dusted the pottery corpse of a half dozen dead butterflies off a cement bench and lay down under the quad under the moonlight for a while, contemplating my sisters and our rebelliousness. We're taking it too far, this rowdiness. Maybe I needed to tone down my part in it, become more responsible, listen to Mama, wash some dishes, or do some laundry for a change. At that exact moment, a star shot across the sky. Its sparkling light faded into the horizon as it died away, unsung, unwept. Immediately following behind it, another star fell from the sky. It went down in the same direction. Then another one, and another, and another. On and on they all went, one right after another, all five descending in the same direction. Something told me I should hurry up and make a wish before the magical moment passed me by. So I closed my eyes and thought about the only thing I truly wanted, Papa. Yes, if I could have anything, I'd have Papa come back into our lives and take care of us. I wanted him to stop touring, get a real job, and be home every day like he used to be when we were young. I wanted Mama to stop working and worrying all the time. It's not like I wanted her to tuck us in at night and sing us a lullaby in Spanish like she used to. We were too old for that now. No, I just wanted to be a family again. With that longing in my heart, I closed my eyes and actually fell asleep right there on the school bench. When I woke up, I lit up the face of my thrift store watch and couldn't believe how long I had napped. It was 10 past midnight. 2 hours had just flown by. I jumped up and trotted past the empty lots, but instead of going straight down the street toward home, I took a detour. I turned into the alley behind our house. Hiding behind the Olivares family's dumpster, I opened my backpack. Hastily, I took one of Mama's blue dress uniforms out and slid it over my own clothes. I unzipped my jean shorts and slipped out of them, shedding them like a snake's skin and stuffing them into my backpack. Then I changed into an old pair of Mama's work shoes and twisted my hair around and pinned it into a half French twist. An easy, well rehearsed styling technique I'd learned from Mama, who always wore her hair that way. I completed the outfit by tying a white apron around my waist. By the time I got to the house, the lights were all out. I could see that in Juanita's bedroom a nightlight was shining. But when I jiggled the latch on the chain link fence, it went out. I kept my head down as I walked into the yard. Just as Mama would, I struggled with the doorknob, pretended to look in Mama's apron pocket for her keys, and finally opened the door. I didn't turn on any lights or make any noise. Like Mama, I chose to walk in darkness. Quickly and quietly, I slipped into her bedroom. I didn't undress. but instead lay on Mama's bed fully clothed with my back to the door. Soon I covered up with her blanket and pretended to snore, congratulating myself the whole time. I was bien águila, the queen of ruse. Not even 10 minutes went by before the bedroom door clicked open and I heard someone enter Mama's bedroom, but I didn't stir. Instead, I continued to fake snore. Mommy? Beta said, quietly, sweetly, reaching the bed and touching my shoulder. She tried to shake me a bit, whining softly under her breath, but I snored again, loudly this time, like Mama does when she's really tired. I heard another noise, more like a rap, then another, a knock, then two, then three, four more. I shifted in bed and halfway turned. In the mirror, I saw the dark silhouettes of at least three of my sisters locked in a muted struggle. In the darkness, I could hear their muffled grunts, and then the intake of a sharp, deep breath before they knocked each other to the floor, taking Mama's ironing board with them. I clicked the table light on and saw Velia, Delia, and Pita all tangled up on the floor. What's going on? I yelled. Pita wailed. They're trying to kill me. She took a sharp breath, struggling to free herself. We are not, Delia and Velia exclaimed, even as they held her down. They had their hands over my nose and mouth. I couldn't breathe, Pita whined, wiping at her eyes with the heel of her hand when finally they freed her. Juanita entered the room and looked from the girls on the floor to me on the bed. What are you doing in Mama's clothes? Stop biting me, you little traitor, Velia spat out. She was so mad she kicked at Pita's leg. Ow! Pita scooted away from them and stood up. I wasn't going to tell. I just wanted to give Mama a goodbye hug. Sure you were, chismosa, Delia scolded. You're the biggest gossip there ever was. She turned around to give me a dirty look. Don't kick her. I let Pita sit on the bed with me. You should be ashamed of yourselves, treating her like that. She's a little girl, not a spy on Mission Impossible. And you're not Cinderella, so why the stupid getup? Juanita threw back at me. I undid the knot on Mama's apron, slipped it off, and laid it on the bed beside me. Then I pulled the pins out of my hair and let my hair loose. It felt good to let my scalp breathe again. Never mind me, I said. Didn't I tell you all to go to bed? You were bluffing, weren't you? Juanita's dark brown eyes narrowed in disgust. There was no sleepover, and you never called Mama. It was all a trick to stall us. Delia got up and dusted her rump. Well, it didn't work. We're going anyway, she announced. That's what this little snitch was doing in here. She was going to tell Mama we're leaving, Velia said, kicking Pita again before she stood up. I said don't kick her, I warned Velia. Then, looking at Juanita, I asked, Oh, yeah, well, how are you going to get there? I started to unzip Mama's uniform down the back. I felt ridiculous sitting there, dressed up like a waitress, even as I tried to sound like the voice of reason. Delia went to the door and blocked it, her feet apart and her arms crossed like some kind of mobster. If you won't drive us there, Juanita will. She's been watching you. She knows how to do it. She has the keys, Delia said, as she went to stand next to her twin. You don't know what you're doing, I said, pulling my clothes off my backpack. I peeled the waitress's uniform off, put on my t-shirt, and pulled my jean shorts back on quickly. Well, we're going anyway, Delia concluded. They walked out of the room, leaving me and Pita to stare at each other. I heard a commotion in the living room, the girls arguing again, but the front was locked, and I had the only key. They're not going anywhere, I assured Pita. No sooner had I said that than I heard the front door slam shut. What the heck? I walked out into the hall just in time to hear my father's old Chevy Nova sputter loudly to life. I pulled off Mama's frumpy shoes and pushed on my own sneakers. Dang it! There was obviously another set of keys to the house and the vehicle. I had no idea where they'd found them, but they had. And now my sisters were trying to drive away in a compromised vehicle without a clue as to how to handle it. Ah, you cussed. Pita followed me down the hall. From the living room window, I saw Juanita, Delia, and Delia jumping into the car. I ran out onto the porch. Hey, get out of the car! What do you think you're doing? I hollered. Juanita put her arm out the window and waved my old canvas bag at me, taunting me from inside the car, daring me to stay behind. Then she revved the engine like a professional race driver and stared me down. Wait for me, Pita called, leaving my side and running out after them. She jumped into the back seat. Seeing that I wasn't leaving the porch, Juanita shrugged, put the car in reverse, and backed out of the driveway. The left corner of the Nova's rear bumper clipped the chain link post, taking the gate with it and knocking down a good part of the fence. Juanita didn't even look back at the fence damage as she put the car in drive. I ran into the darkened street as Juanita peeled out. Come back here, I yelled. But they were driving off so fast, I had to cut across the neighbors' lawns and through their backyards to keep up with them. Pumping my arms and legs as fast as I could, I followed the car all the way down the corner. My breath was coming in raged gasps, and I could barely hear the knocking engine of Papa's old car for the pulse pounding against my eardrums. Okay, I screamed. Okay, I'm coming with you. Stop! Stop! They paused long enough for me to jump into the front seat, while Velia made room for me quickly by crawling into the back with Delia and Pita. Can you at least let me drive? I asked. You can drive us into Mexico, but not before that, Juanita said, gripping the wheel resolutely.
Then turn on the lights, I demanded as we made our way down Main Street in the dark. If they didn't want to get stopped by the police, we should at least look like we knew that much about driving. The idea made me think that perhaps I shouldn't have pointed that out to her. Getting a cop's attention would definitely bring their harebrained trip into Mexico to a standstill. But the police involvement was more of a last resort. There had to be a better way. Use the wipers, I continued. Get these dead butterflies off the windshield so we can see where we're going. It wasn't at all how I had planned our night to end, but I had figured all hope wasn't lost. It was just easier to let my sisters think they'd won. However, the instant I buckled up, I promised myself I'd surrender the body when we got to the international bridge, no matter what.